Hey y'all, in this week's lesson, I want to tell you about a very common tree in the American South and throughout the eastern part of the country and in areas, other areas as well. That's actually a very powerful herb. This is the tulip poplar. I'll show you the leaf. Kind of looks a little like a maple leaf, but it's got this big indentation on the top. And it's the only tree that has a leaf of this shape. So remember this leaf and look for this tree. This is actually, even though the name is tulip poplar, it is not in the poplar family. It is in the magnolia family. It is Liriodendron, that's the Latin name. And in the spring, it will form a nice little flower right here that looks sort of like a tulip. So that's where it gets the name tulip. Where it got the name poplar, I'm not exactly sure. Uh, this herb, this tree, was essential in the Civil War era. The entire South was blockaded. The North didn't allow food or medicine in an attempt to starve out the South. And malaria was incredibly prevalent. Malaria comes with intermittent fevers, so where you, as you may be intensely sick at one point for years, the fevers come back every. Some would have a fever every 3 days. Some would have a fever every 4 days. That's talked about a lot in the old herbals. In fact, Sir Walter Raleigh, who discovered North Carolina, um, was a great hero of English society and known for his gentlemanly ways, his chivalry. Well, he kind of fell afoul of the government and they beheaded him. A lot of history books don't include that. Uh, he was actually asked to be beheaded before his, I can't remember if he had an every 3 day fever or an every 4 day fever, but he actually asked to be beheaded before his fever from malaria came back around. Um, the remedy that was eventually found by Jesuit priests in South America from the natives in the area was cinchona bark, which we now know as quinine. Okay, we've heard a lot about quinine and its various derivatives throughout COVID. During the Civil War, what they had was tulip poplar and the inner bark of dogwood. Tea made from the bark of the poplar, the tulip poplar, the leaves of the tulip poplar, and the inner bark of dogwood was a substitute for quinine. But this tree has so many other uses. For in Native American medicine, it was often used for heart problems. It was used to help prevent heart attacks, to help recover from heart attacks, and for what we would now call arteriosclerosis. Um, well, you know what? I'm going to turn to my book on medicinal trees, and I'll try to run through some more uses pretty quickly because you'll be surprised by this one. 1898, King's American Dispensatory was a book that was used by pharmacists and doctors to know how to make medicine. Really until the 1920s, 1940s, almost all medicine that doctors prescribed and that pharmacists compounded was made from herbs. Now doctors act like if it doesn't come from a pharmaceutical company, a pill, it's just worthless and herbs are superstition. Well, herbs were the only medicine except for, a few metals and minerals for thousands of years, really up until recent times. And, you know, considering that the leading cause of death in America now is malpractice, overprescription of drugs, and, you know, modern medicine actually kills more people than disease. Yeah, I think we ought to maybe look at going back to the herbs, don't you? They don't certainly don't cost as much. Well, King's American Dispensatory tells us that the tulip tree bark is an aromatic and stimulant tonic and is proved beneficial in intermittents. Intermittents would be those fevers that came every few days, or sometimes longer periods. Also good for chronic rheumatism. That's rheumatism or arthritis, chronic gastric and intestinal diseases, worms, and hysteria. And this is interesting because hysteria, they would combine the tea or extract of this plant with laudanum, which is opium tincture, and yeah, I bet that would calm a person down pretty darn quick. Laudanum was very commonly used in early America, especially after the Civil War. I mean, you had people not only going around with limbs blown off and no anesthetics for field medicine other than opium, laudanum, um, but also what we would now call PTSD, and it was a real epidemic, really. You know, from the late 1800s into the early 1900s, we had a huge opiate problem, almost as bad as we have now. But back then, you could just walk in and buy laudanum over the counter, and you could make it yourself, and it was legal. So was marijuana. So were a lot of things. So was cocaine. Cocaine was thought to be like the best thing on earth for a person. My, how times have changed, right? Anyway, it's also supposed to be good for hectic fevers. This is again the tulip poplar. Night sweats and diarrhea. Warm infusion is diaphoretic, which means it helps break a fever, induces sweating, and it has diuretic properties, which means it helps get rid of excess fluid, lower blood pressure. One of the most interesting properties of the plant was found by a professor named Bartholow around 1800. He discovered an alkaloid called tuliparin. Tuliparin is a strong stimulant to the nervous system, and it's actually still used somewhat today, but it's not something an herbalist would really use. I'm going to go ahead and look at Plants for Future, which is a modern herbal. They say the intensely bitter inner bark, especially the roots, is used domestically as a diuretic, tonic, and stimulant. The raw green bark is also chewed as an aphrodisiac. Now that is kind of interesting. One would assume it's because of that stimulant effect of the tuliparin. And, whereas it could probably be pretty dangerous if we were trying to use, that concentrated extract of tuliparin, chewing the green bark is likely a very safe way of getting that same compound. And hey, if it works for you, you know, go for it. I have no experience chewing the inner green bark. Um, the tuliparin, as I said, exerts powerful effects on the heart and nervous system. A tea is used of this plant is used in the treatment of indigestion and dysentery. Dysentery is diarrhea; it's out of control. Rheumatism, coughs, and fevers. Externally, the tea has been used as a wash and poultice on wounds and boils. The root, bark, and seeds have been used to expel worms from the body. And actually, the seeds were very commonly used by Native Americans for worms. Peterson Field Guide for Medicinal Plants says that American Indians use the bark tea for indigestion, dysentery, and rheumatism, pinworms specifically. And pinworms are said to be very difficult to get rid of. Fevers and cough syrups, externally used as a wash for fractured limbs, wounds, boils, and snake bites. Green bark chewed as an aphrodisiac again, and a stimulant. Bark tea used as a folk remedy for malaria, toothaches. Ointment from the buds used for burns and inflammation. Crushed leaves poultice for headaches. So you can see this is this is a very powerful herb, and it grows all up into Canada. Um, in fact, there's some kind of tradition in Canada, according to Botany in a Day, of using the root to take away the bitterness in brewing alcohol. I don't know. That's again not something I have any uh, experience with. I mean, I'm usually using hops to put bitterness in my beer and such, but the I looked up also the physician's desk reference for herbal medicine. And, I've said before how doctors like to pretend that herbs are just superstition. There's actually a physician's desk reference for herbal medicine. It's like almost 1,000 pages long. It's that thick. And this is what they say officially. This is based on clinical trials and peer-reviewed evidence. The alkaloids contained in the drug that's tuliparin are antimicrobial in effect. Uh, positively, int- a positively entropic effect has been described. It is useful as a tonic, and we'd be talking more of the whole plant now. It is useful as a tonic and a stimulant, and appears to be plausible based upon its qualities as a bitter substance. Unproven uses in folk medicine indications include using it for fever, menstrual complaints, and insomnia and malaria. Precautions and adverse reactions. Now, this is the big thing. The drug, again, we'd be talking more of the isolated alkaloid, is considered toxic due to its alkaloid content. But in using the whole plant or bark, leaves, and all that, no case of poisoning among humans has ever been recorded. So, tulip poplar, powerful herb, fairly common throughout most of North America. Get out and look for it, scout it before you need it, and next time a viral epidemic comes along, you might actually have something that could give you a little help. So y'all have a great week, and I will talk to you next time.